Welcome to our discussion of running for office, the choice to run. The reasons that individuals become political candidates vary almost as much as the individuals do. Yet, four types of motivation are generally in play when a person decides to declare a candidacy. A sense of civic responsibility, the feeling on the candidate's part that he or she bears an obligation to govern. A sense of party loyalty, or feeling the need for parties to run viable candidates. Personal goals, and in particular, interest in electoral politics and office holding as a career. Interest in increasing the candidate's name recognition and stature in the community, often for business reasons. Some people believe they have an obligation to put their experience, knowledge, and skills to work for the greater good of a community or country. Often, these civically motivated people become politically involved out of concerns about specific issues. They might object to a specific policy or want to see the government take action on a given issue. For example, Representative Carolyn McCarthy, a Democrat from New York, ran for and won a seat in the House of Representatives after her husband was killed and her son was injured in a mass shooting on the Long Island Railroad. While nursing her adult son's injuries after the senseless tragedy, McCarthy decided to run when her congressman voted to repeal a ban on assault weapons. Sometimes an individual may choose to run for office out of a sense of party duty. The candidate may run as a sacrificial lamb for a seat he or she has little chance of winning, mainly with the intent to ensure that the party offers an alternative to the favored candidate. Or an elected official may decide to run for another office because he or she has the best chance at winning an election and allowing the party to attain control of that office. Other people are motivated to run for a particular office because of personal goals. Many of these individuals seek elected office as their career, whereas presidents and governors typically serve no more than 8 years. Members of Congress, state legislators, county commissioners, and council members often serve for decades. Holding office is what they do, and because of the advantage of incumbency, once elected, many remain in office for years. Other candidates run for office because of political ambitions. A town council member who aspires to serve in the state legislature might run for county commissioner even if she thinks she will not win because she realizes that leading a viable campaign might help her in a later bid for that state house. Finally, some people run for office because of the heightened stature that a candidacy brings to their regular careers. Lawyers may run for the state legislature, realtors for the city council, or insurance brokers for county commissioner because a candidacy makes them more successful in their daily occupations. Running for office enhances a person's name recognition so that, for example, the realtor sitting on the city council might get more business because people in the community know his name. Running for office also opens doors to network of potential business contacts as many candidates address civic groups and get to know people in the community. These networks can be useful in business as well as politics. Many candidates, of course, run for office for a combination of reasons. They might believe, for example, that they have a responsibility to serve their country and that they have something valuable to contribute. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution specifies some minimum criteria for those seeking election to hold federal office. For president, a candidate for the presidency must be a natural-born citizen. Naturalized citizens who are born citizens of another country and then choose to become American citizens, such as Ilena Ross Lithian, a Republican from Florida, member of the House of Representatives and a native of Cuba, cannot run for president. Presidential candidates also must be at least 35 years old. The youngest person elected president was 43-year-old JFK, but Teddy Roosevelt, who assumed the presidency after William McKinley's assassination, was the youngest to hold the office at age 42. A presidential candidate also must have been a resident of the United States for 14 years by the time of inauguration. For vice president, a vice presidential candidate, like a contender for the presidency, must be a natural-born citizen and must be at least 35 years old. He or she must not be a resident of the same state as the candidate for president with whom he or she will serve. John Breckinridge, elected vice president in 1856 at age 35, was the youngest person to win the office. A candidate for U.S. Senate must have citizenship status of at least 9 years, must be at least 30 years old when taking office, and must be a resident of the state from which he or she is elected. U.S. Representative, a candidate for the House of Representatives, must be a citizen for at least 7 years, must be at least 25 years old when taking office, and must be a resident of the state from which he or she is elected. Typically, a state's constitution determines the minimal qualifications for the governorship and state legislature, and these vary from state to state. In general, state requirements address the same issues as federal guidelines: citizenship, age, and residency. In addition to the legal eligibility requirements prescribed by the federal and state constitutions, informal eligibility criteria, that is, the characteristics that voters expect office holders to have, help to determine who is qualified to run for a particular office. By and large, the eligibility pool for elected office depends on the office, and so although your car mechanic might be considered a good candidate for your town council, he would not likely meet the informal eligibility criteria to be elected president of the United States. Generally speaking, the higher and more prestigious the political office, the greater the informal eligibility requirements are. On the local level, particularly in small communities, an individual would be considered eligible to run for town council if he or she was liked and respected in the community, had lived in the community long enough to know the voters, and was gainfully employed, a homemaker, or retired. Farther up the political office ladder, state legislative candidates in most states are expected to have some kind of professional career. Still, there is a great deal of variation from state to state, and certainly non-professionals occupy many state legislative seats. State legislatures tend to be dominated by lawyers and business professionals, occupations that offer the prestige to be considered part of the informal eligibility pool, and that allow enough flexibility to facilitate campaigning and legislative work. The informal eligibility requirements for federal office are even more stringent. Voters expect candidates for the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, and the presidency to have higher qualifications than candidates for state and local offices. Among most congressional constituencies, candidates for federal office would be viewed as qualified to hold office if they had a college degree, considerable professional and leadership experience, and strong communication skills. But informal qualifications vary according to the political culture in a district, with some districts favoring a particular religious affiliation, ethnicity, or other characteristic. In races for the U.S. Senate and the presidency, the popular press examines the minutest details of candidates' professional and educational background. For example, sometimes it is not enough that the candidate are college graduates. Where they went to college, whose university is more prestigious, and who had the higher grade point average are all fodder for the media and political pundits.